My name is Dan Hosier. I'm an amateur trick shot artist, and these are the level 2 Masse shots. With the level 2 Masse shots, we're going to be going from a more or less horizontal stroke to a more or less vertical stroke. Because of that, the cue is going to be driving down into the table, and there's actually a very good chance, especially as you're learning these shots, there's a very good chance of ripping the cloth. So be aware of that, be aware of where you practice these shots, as well as doing some things to mitigate the chance of ripping the cloth in the first place. There's really two things that you can do for that. One is keep the cue as vertical as you can. I feel very confident hitting with a vertical stroke anywhere on the table, because I know that I'm not going to rip the cloth if I'm going straight down. If I was more at an angle, I would not want to do that because I'd be likely to end up ripping the cloth. So keep as vertical as you can. And the great thing about these three shots is you really don't need a lot of angle out. You don't need to come out a long ways before having the spin take. And then the second thing is use a break cloth. This is just a piece of cloth from another table. And what that does is just gives you a little bit more protection to the table when your cue does come through the cue ball and into the table. It hits the break cloth rather than the tablecloth. Shot 1A is a very classic Masse stroke. What we're going to do is shoot the 1 in the corner pocket. Cue ball is going to come out, come back, and pocket the 3. For setup, first thing I want to do is place the 3. So I'm going to take the 1 and put it about in the center of the pocket where it's going to go into the pocket. And then I bring the 3 so that it's 1/4 of an inch off the rail and 1/4 of an inch off the 1. That gives me enough room to get the 1 in, but gets the 3 as close to the pocket as I can. The second thing is it increases the angle that I can hit the 3. So if I hit the 3 even with the cue ball completely on the rail, it's still going to hit the jaws of the pocket and go in. But it also gives me enough room to hit it in to there, so that you can see that angle is pretty significant, that it lets me actually make that shot. And then as far as the 1, I just place it so the leading edge is even with the point of the pocket, and the cue ball is absolutely frozen to the 1. I do use a stool when I do my Masse shots. It's called raising the floor, which is a requirement that 1 foot has to be on the floor, but you're allowed to raise the floor. So that's why I like to use a stool for that. And then my aiming point is going to be through the second diamond on the long rail. So I take my cue, bring that up, so that I'm still aiming through that. I have center ball on the cue ball, and then what I'm going to do is go to about 9 o'clock English, just about a tip off center. And so 9 o'clock English is in relation to where my aiming point is. So if this is my aiming point, then 9 o'clock is here, kind of by the rail. So adjustments I would make, one is how much angle I have on the cue. If I end up hitting the rail hard and having the cue ball bounce way out, then I hit too shallow. If the 1 doesn't go in, or the cue ball doesn't make it past the 3, then I have too steep of an angle. But I'm going to aim the second diamond, come down center ball, 9 o'clock, about a tip. Shot 2B is the machine gun Masse. For this shot, we're going to need the cue ball plus 15 object balls. Easiest way to count to 15 is to just put those in a full rack. Once you have that, what we want to do is then count 10. So I'm going to remove 5, remove another one, and make the cue ball my 10th ball. And the reason for that is the cue ball is going to be the 10th ball away from the side of the pocket. Now because I'm using a brake cloth, I want to be sure and put the cue ball under the brake cloth. So I'm going to place both the 9th ball and the cue ball under the cloth. And then make sure that a ball on the other side of the cue ball would be able to be frozen to the cue ball rather than rolling off. So once I've done all of that, I'm going to just set up my row of balls that are going to be one ball off of the rail. And then just keep continuing that down, taking balls from the first row until we have that even with the cue ball. Once I've done that, I'm going to put 2 more to the left, so 1 left of the cue ball, 1 left of the row of balls, and then 2 more balls are going to be frozen to the rail, making a line of 3 balls for the cue ball. The final ball we're going to place next to the pocket, and that's going to be the ball that we're trying to make. What we're going to do is shoot into the stack. Cue ball is going to come back, bounce between the balls, and pocket the 3. For the setup, there's not a whole lot to it. You want a fairly vertical stroke on this, and then you want to be shooting straight down the line. So that's my aiming point. And I'm going to come just about a tip below center, and then a 1/4 tip or a 1/2 tip to the left. And that tip to the left is going, or a 1/2 tip to the left is going to let the cue ball keep coming back to the rail rather than getting stuck behind these object balls. So straight down the center, find center ball, tip below, 1/4 tip left, and then straight through. With shot 2C, we have the 1 in one corner, we have the cue ball in the other corner, and we have a rack close to the cue ball blocking the way. What we're going to do is shoot the cue ball out, and then have Masse take over and pocket the 1. The cue ball can't be further than a ball away from the rail, so that's the maximum. But I usually put it pretty close to in the jaws of the pocket, so that the edge is kind of right between the points. That gets me definitely closer than I need to be. And then the next thing I want to do is set up my visualization. For me, visualization on this shot is really key. So what I'm going to do is first find where I want to have the cue ball get to. And that's going to be 2 balls off of the point of the rack. That gets me close enough that I'm not having to come back too much, but far enough that I'm not going to end up just clipping the rack. So what I want to do is set up 3 balls right off the edge there, and so that's how far I want the cue ball to get out. The second thing I want to do is lay my cue along the 15 and then right to the middle of the 1. And this is going to be the angle that I want the cue ball to be driving back. So I need to hit the cue ball so that the spin goes straight down this cue. What I'm going to do is see this angle, bring my cue till it's a lot closer to the cue ball, having that same angle. And so I've got the cue over the first diamond. And where that ends up being on this table is about at the 1.5 diamond. So that's going to be where I'm aiming for. So what I'm going to do is aim straight at the 15 with the idea of the cue ball then curving down this line. So when I set that up, I would set it up so I'm aiming at the 15. I go about a tip down from that, and then along the line go to the left. So after I go down a tip, then I'm going to go left along that line, and then aiming hard enough to get to where the 15 is. So I can take away those cues, the visual cue there, and have my angle I know where I want to get to. Down about a tip, left along that line. The question I think most people ask when they're getting into doing masse shots is, what's a masse cue? And so I thought I'd just go ahead and talk about that. This is my normal playing cue, and then this is my masse cue. Right off the bat, you can see the masse cue is quite a bit shorter, but if you look more closely, you'll see that where it's shorter is actually in the shaft, not in the butt. So the butt is going to be the same size as a regular playing cue, but where you want the shortness is going to be in the shaft. The reason for that is you're going to be hitting down into the table, and that can cause a lot of strain on the shaft. You don't want a pro taper where it gets thin quickly and then stays thin all the way. This is really a conical taper all the way down, like you'd see in a house cue. So this conical taper all the way down just gives a little bit more support to the shaft. And then the second thing is where it terminates. This is quite a bit shorter at the tip than my masse cue. Hopefully you'll be able to see that in the video. But you can see that the tip of the masse cue, they're typically 13 millimeters. It's going to be quite a bit bigger than on your normal playing cue, typically. So really the big difference that we've talked about so far is really just in durability. You can do it with a normal playing cue. You will break a shaft of a normal playing cue if you do. So really the number one thing as far as the shaft goes is just durability of the shaft. Second thing is there's some bolts, some bolt weights in here that just make it a little bit heavier. Where my playing cue is about 17 ounces, my masse cue is about 20 ounces. So it just makes it a little bit heavier, allows the cue to do some of the work of bringing the cue back down into the table, rather than having to really kind of force it down into the table. So that's really the basics of a masse cue. There's some that are commercially available. Most masse cues are actually custom work. But the one I use is a commercially available one, and this is Eric Yao's masse cue. If you get on Amazon or whatever, you should be able to locate a Eric Yao masse cue pretty easily there. So that's kind of the overview on cues. Masse shots basically have two components. One is going to be the amount that the ball is skidding across the table. With masse shots, you're putting extreme spin on the cue ball. If I have the spin going back towards this pocket, in order to go out, it has to actually be skimming along the surface without the power grabbing. And so there's some ways you can control that. If you need to go out just a little bit, you can hit with a pretty soft stroke. If you need to go out further, you can hit with a harder stroke. Now you can see that both of those came back to about the same place. And that's because I kept the cue at the same location. So if it goes further out because I've hit hard, it's also going to have more spin and will come back. The second way that you can adjust how far the cue ball goes out is with the angle of the cue. So if I'm at a pretty steep angle here, I know about how far I'm going to get out. I think it's going to be about to here. But if I increase the angle of that, two things are going to happen. One is I'm going to get further out, and two, I'm not going to quite have the same spin back. So I have more angle on the cue ball now. And you can see it got quite a bit further out, but didn't come as far back. So part one is how far the cue ball skids out. You can do that with power, and you can do that with angle. The second part of the masse shot is the direction that it goes when the spin takes over. And that's kind of the easier part to think about. If you want the cue ball to go out and then come back towards the left, then what you want to do is find center, go down by going to 6 o'clock. That's going to draw the cue ball back. So center, down to about 6 o'clock, and then I'm going to go about a half tip to the left. And we can see that it came back to the left just like I wanted it to. Same thing if I go to the right instead. So 6 o'clock, a tip, and then half tip to the right. Does the same thing. If I wanted, instead of it coming back to the rail, if I wanted to go out and then kind of off to the sides, then I would want to do the same shot but without the draw. So here I would go to center and then off to the right, but without going lower. And so it really goes the direction that you want it to go, that you put the spin on the cue ball, is where it's going to go. If I want to go out and then to the right, but not back, I just need to make sure that I hit in the right place. Now that wasn't a very good masse. Let me see if I can get a little bit more masse on it this time. There we go. So that's basically it. When you have a masse shot, you need to visualize both parts. How far you want it to go out. That's going to be how steep the angle on the cue is. And then also what direction you want it to go. And that's going to be pretty much pointing through the center of where you're cueing to the direction that you want to go. So have fun with those. Again, be careful with your tables, and especially don't practice these shots on someone else's table until you get a good feel for the shots.